Breaking the gray.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, morning, Russ. Afternoon here.
I feel like I'm on stage. I'm watching the Sarah Turner concert now with your audio. You're amazing today. You sound beautiful. It's amazing.
Yeah, maybe I've finally pressed the right button in season 3, episode 60 or whatever we're at.
I think we're hitting nearly 70 episodes. We've done a great job of we've stumbled our way to podcast. I'll say mediocrity. We're getting there. We're working our way up. But I'll tell you one thing that we have done a great job of, Sarah, is we have had amazing guests. You have brought so many wonderful, beautiful human beings to our show. And today is the same. We have another great guest, and I'd love for you to introduce who's here today.
Yeah, well, I'm very pleased that Carrie Bennett is here, aka Carrie B Wellness. We haven't actually met in person, but I'm so glad you've agreed to come on the show because the quantum biology piece is something that I know I've been talking about for a long time, but you're doing it so eloquently with your channel and all the things you've got going on, the courses. So welcome to the show. It's so nice to meet you.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Russ. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you, Carrie. For us, Sarah and I spend a lot of time talking about red light therapy, benefits. I'm out waiting for the sun to crest over the mountain so I can get that early morning sunlight. Tell us, in terms of your world and your biohacking, what is your superpower? What is it that you specialize in that we can share today?
Yeah, I specialize in the intersection between light and water in our bodies, and really how it is one of the most underrated topics I think we know about when it comes to optimizing our health and just the amazing things it does. So really was a game changer for me to switch from more of a biochemistry paradigm to more of a biophysics paradigm and understand that, the chemistry is like a written diary of what the biophysics already dictated a long time ago. And so that's where all of a sudden I started to elevate my practices surrounding light, being outside, grounding, just in how that interacts with us. It's just so cool when you dive into it.
Sarah shared once that water is smart and water holds the light. And so I'm so curious about this. Sarah, I know you're going to ask a question too.
Well, I was just wondering what your background is, Carrie. Is your background biology or is it physics? Because you're right, this is kind of a new way of looking at health, and it takes people coming from both directions. So I wonder, which side did you start on?
Yeah, I started on the wrong side. I started on the biology side, not to say it's wrong, right? But it's just a completely different paradigm shift in my brain. So undergrad was biology with an emphasis on microbiology. And then grad school was actually the biochemistry of nutrition, right? And so I was still in that chemistry mindset. And it worked okay for me and my clients, but I was always seeking foundational. So being a clinician and just like a nerd, right? That nerd clinician that loves to dive into the science. It was like, wait, I thought I'm teaching my clients to do everything perfectly, so to speak, when it comes to exercise, nutrition, and it just wasn't cutting it. And so that's where I was like, there's got to be something more foundational. And that's what got me into the biophysics.
Very cool. And where did you get your inspiration from? Because I know it's not something that's currently taught academically, or at least certainly wasn't when I was doing my biology courses. And so I was, I've been looking at people like May Wan Ho and Jack Kruse to kind of get that information. But I just wondered, how did you come across this information yourself?
I came across it from basically a Google search, right? And I don't even remember what it was. And this was when Google was still popping up stuff like this. And we had a Jack Kruse blog that just came prominent. And I opened it and I was almost angry reading it in a couple of ways. I was angry because he seemed so arrogant laying out this knowledge. And I was angry that I'd never learned it, right? It was like, wait a second, this makes sense.
Yes,
and so I dove headfirst into all of his stuff. But what I think what made it even better was that he recommended to me some amazing scientists when it came to this. So you're right. May Wan Ho is like my idol. I've loved everything she put out. And it was the intersection between May Wan Ho, James Oshman, Gerald Pollack, Dr. Kruse. That just solidified it for me for this to be like a very legitimate and fascinating way to look at the body.
Yeah, for sure. I think we probably had very similar paths in that respect. But so what do you think is the main difference then between this way of looking at the body and the kind of mainstream or the way that is still taught in biology classes?
Yeah, the biology class mindset, I think fundamentally it's influenced. They want to hold on to a chemistry-based paradigm or a molecular-based paradigm because it's easy then to fund research to influence chemicals, right? And influence molecules and even things that change gene expression. So you can talk about the fact that there's some funding interests in that. You can talk about the fact that it's harder to measure things at the scale of biophysics, electrons, protons, photons, super challenging. But so I think we're stuck there because it's such an easy thing to study. And then you can draw fun diagrams, right? Like you can talk about this cascade happening and you can talk about these secondary messengers. And it's fun to look at and study. But if you then actually think about how the body functions, and Albert St. Georgi was the one who really highlighted this for me. He basically said the body is too dang fast and complex to be explained via biochemistry because those are slow reactions compared to how the body needs to operate in real time.
So what's the alternative? What did you come to from that? I agree with you, it's slow, but then how does it work? That's the next question, isn't it?
Well, yeah, the next question was, well, what is there beyond the chemicals? And so once I realized then all the chemicals are simply made up of atoms, which are made up of electrons, protons, neutrons, interact with photons. And that's when I said, okay, we have to study it from the quantum perspective, which was a scary word. It was a scary word at the time because it sounded like it was not attainable to study things from a quantum perspective. But that's what I did, right? I dove into a lot of great research that showed that when we look at the body as a collection of subatomic particles that respond to our environment, that's where I understood, that's why light matters so much. That's why the water network of our body matters so much. And that has some special characteristics that I just love. And so that's really what got me to this level of research and then application.
For sure. And of course, then that has a huge implication for, not only health and biology, but for life in general. How are we actually living? And of course, like you say, there are a lot of interests that are kind of pushing different agendas. When that becomes apparent, also, there's a kind of responsibility to kind of think about that in a different way. But what do you think is your major learning? I mean, really, what was the thing that blew your mind the most?
Reading The Fourth Phase of Water for the first time, and then Mae-Wan Ho's book, Living Rainbow H2O. Right? To understand that the water in our bodies, it's not, like we got this water that swirls around in a glass and we assume, the body is 70% water. And we assume it looks just like that water sloshing around in the glass. And that's also where the chemistry and the biology textbooks led me astray, because they led me to believe that a cell was almost like a water balloon. So it's full of this water. And then, that membrane can exchange things, but the inside, it's just a bunch of water and things are kind of sloshing and swimming around and randomly interacting with each other. And that's not how it is at all. The water in our body organizes things and the cells are jam-packed. There's no room for swimming molecules randomly searching for something to bump into. And so, that's really the game changer, was recognizing how different the cell was physically than what I had studied. And then just those two books, game changers.
Sarah, we talked early in our podcasting history about structured water.
We did.
And I read something recently around that rainwater is no longer safe for us. It's actually all rainwater now has been exposed to some chemical and it's no longer safe. I have to imagine when you're saying things about our body, that how has our body changed over the centuries because our environment has changed? And is the water inside of us changing as well? I mean, it's kind of a newbie question, but I wonder if that's happened too.
Well, let me start off. Let's go into that water if you're okay with it, right? Let's talk about what it does. So inside of us, that water isn't sloshing, right? It's organized. It's structured, like you said, that's the word. And so everywhere there's a biological surface, that water is structured into a very specific hexagonal lattice, if you will, where the H's and O's of the H2O molecule are organized. So it creates this almost like a gel-like structure to it, as opposed to a liquid. And as the body naturally does this, as it structures itself, the structured part of that water, in order to form that structure, they got to kick out a hydrogen. that extra hydrogen doesn't fit into that lattice. And so they kick out the hydrogen. They have the other O's and H's arranged in that lattice. And that lattice now is no longer neutral, like water in a glass. It actually has a charge. It's negatively charged. And then you kick out that hydrogen. That's a proton, right? They actually kick out a proton. And so you've got this structured water, you've got this proton zone, negative charge, positive charge battery. And I think that's where Gerald Pollack's work really blew my mind, was when they showed that there's enough potential energy in that charge separation to power a light bulb. And so I'm a firm believer now that that's a different paradigm shift too, that the energy we get, ATP serves a slightly different purpose than what we've talked about. We've elevated it to like the sole energy currency of the body. And I think the water is the true energy network of the body. But going back then, Russ, to your question, now I realize that our modern lifestyle, pretty much everything we do is working against that process that the body wants to do, right? The body naturally wants to structure it like that, but being inside away from infrared light sources, because modern glass and modern light bulbs, it's too energy draining apparently to have those these days, right? And so infrared light helps to maintain that water battery. That water battery can connect to frequencies, which sounds so flip and woo until you realize it's a liquid crystal. What frequencies do we have? I mean, I'm guilty of it. We've got Wi-Fi, we've got Bluetooth technologies, all of that, right? That water battery then also, it needs to be pure. In physics, things work better when they're pure. Well, what are impurities that damage it? Heavy metals, glyphosate, you name it, right? Pretty much every toxin can have an impact on that. And so I think you're exactly right. If we were just natural humans, 100, even 200 years ago, this would be a non-issue. But because we've been clever enough to create this particular lifestyle, it doesn't come without consequences when you talk about that water network.
And Carrie, so everything you just said, I'm like, that was episode 32. That was episode 40. We talked about heavy metal. Like, this is the foundation of everything. And the fact that we are not living in purity, but the amazing thing is that we adapt. Our bodies adapt, and that humans adapt to the environments that they're in, means that something else is happening within that structured water in our body now that's very different than it was 100 years ago.
Oh,
and
yeah,
is it, and is it adapting to the frequencies coming in?
It has to be, right? It has to be. So how does the body know what to do in real time? We have to have a sixth sense beyond what we smell, see, taste, feel. And just speaking on that kind of wacky quantum level, if we were to observe all the frequencies around us, we would change the behavior of those particles, right? Observation changes particle behavior. So of course we have a way to interact with all those frequencies that doesn't involve our direct observation. And so that's what that liquid crystalline water, that structured water in us. And I'm super excited for Dr. Pollack's book to come out this fall, because he has one where he did tons of research on water and consciousness, water and memory, all those wonderful topics that, people like Masaru Emoto, Luc Montagnier, dove into slightly, but now it's going to be organized. I think that water in our body is what's interacting with the frequencies. It is an antenna for the electromagnetic frequencies, for the scalar frequencies in our environment. And it's through that water and a slight change or a slight twisting of a bond, if you will, or a change in the electron status of an area. That's what gives us the information we need to adapt in real time. So I think we are capable of adapting. I just think that there's a lot of insults that we're trying to overcome. This is going to be a critical period, I think, in human history. It's this combination of we can adapt, but can we make that adaptation easier by recognizing that our environment is lacking in things like infrared and potentially maximizing our exposure to those to facilitate this adaptation process?
And there is some evidence, I think, that humans are kind of maladapting to some of this, Russ, because if humans have been in the same form for like 200,000 years or whatever it is, and now all of a sudden we have this very short period of history where we're bombarded with these different frequencies and we're seeing a lot of chronic illness. So people are adapting. At what price? Because every time you kind of make a little concession in the body, maybe that people are paying the price a little bit further down the line. It is interesting to speculate where the future generations, real generations going forward, maybe that we do have some strange adaptation to Wi-Fi and electronics if we keep going down this route. But certainly it looks like it's a bumpy ride right now for us humans that are still a little bit primal, living in this very alien landscape of all these frequencies. So it's interesting. I've kind of Russ and I little dabble sometimes in scripts and things. And Russ has written some fabulous scripts. And I sometimes think that's a great sci-fi story right there about.
I was just going to say, Sarah, I wonder if, I'm hoping that maybe this is going to unleash our ability as humans to fly. I was like, please, just can we adapt so we can fly some way? I just wrote this whole script about flying, and I'm obsessed with when can humans fly? Is this going to be it? Are we going to have to get off the ground now and fly in the air? Because birds seem to survive all of it.
Well, no, not all the time. There's lots of birds near tower.
Yeah.
It's true. Where the bees are gone, I know. The winged creatures are going away. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, anyhow. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But I think it's interesting that the whole thing, you're right, the most fascinating thing in biology right now is the whole thing about light and water and the interaction, and how when people start to recognize that, what are the implications for studying, how the body works, what are the implications for therapies going forward. I mean, Russ knows that I bang on about red light all the time. That's my thing, because it's the closest thing I can find which you can kind of put into a therapy that mimics nature. I mean, really, it would be great if I could say, right, this is how you have to live, sleep outside, see sunrise, all of these things. But at the moment we are in this world, so red light is a good kind of interim step. But Carrie, what do you find for your clients, if you're kind of starting people off looking at their bodies in this different way, relating to biophysics? How do you start people off on a journey of trying to implement some of these things? Because what we've talked about, the whole thing about structured water, for us, it's fascinating, but for people who are actually trying to get their heads around, okay, but what can I do? How do you take people through that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And typically the first thing people ask me is, okay, well, what type of water should I drink? And I actually tell them, you have to optimize the water that your body naturally makes, right? And that's where I take them into this idea of mitochondria and mitochondrial health, because they make the water for us. And so then it's like, okay, well, if the mitochondria matter, what do my mitochondria need? What do they need? And mitochondria, just like pretty much all the other aspects of our body, they need a strong circadian rhythm, right? Because they help to optimize hormone production, electron flow, immune function, gene expression with biophoton signaling. They do all of that when they know where they are in time and space. And so step one is being aware of the light that's entering your eyes during the day, and then also trying to keep artificial light out of your eyes at night. So, some clients are gung-ho and it's like, okay, tell me exactly what to do perfectly. And it would be something like, get up. If you are up before sunrise, try to minimize your exposure to artificial light, block it with some orange lenses, go outside when the sun's, around, see the natural light into your eyes, tell that clock in your brain what time it is so it can communicate that to the rest of your body, and start that day rolling. And I do find that morning sunlight frequencies, when we're studying that, we recognize that those morning wavelengths, how nature kind of layers them on and gives us different physiological benefits based on it, that's a really key sequencing. So I tell people, if you have a time of day where you have to be more inside, try to make that maybe mid-afternoon, because if you can capture those morning wavelengths, that can be a game changer. So the light signaling really matters to the mitochondria. And then it's like, okay, you're so right, Sarah. I'm such a huge fan of the photobiomodulation database. I knew it was beneficial, but it wasn't until about 6 months ago that I dove deeply into the literature. It's insane. The fact that this isn't a household a household device, it's mind blowing. And so then I say, okay, you're dealing with maybe.
Can I ask, what is that? What is that?
Oh, red light.
I'm sure we've talked about it. Yeah.
Red light therapy, red light panels.
Oh yeah. Okay. Sorry. Sarah, I asked that question. You're probably kicking me from the UK right now for asking that question. But I'm sorry. It was just
biomodulation, Russ. Remember your Jedi training.
I know. I'm so sorry. But you said photobiomodulation database, and then you said device. I'm like, wait, is there I was like, wait a second. Is there a device? Okay, sorry, Sarah.
No,
that was
Russ. You're exactly right. That's a great segue or a great comment, because so many of my clients want a device. It's like, oh, yeah, go outside, rah, rah, woo, woo, whatever, go outside. But when I tell them, oh, by the way, you can get some really good benefits by supplementing the missing light frequencies using a panel, they're all about it. They're 1,000 times more compliant, at least at first, using a red light therapy panel than they are going outside, until they start to say, oh, this light thing does matter. I'm noticing some changes. Maybe I should kind of, take the time to explore these other recommendations. But the panel, so that's another one, right? I really highly recommend a red light therapy panel, because no matter what your toxin exposure level is, or no matter what your infection, a lot of people are dealing with chronic infections or mold exposure, that all just messes up with step 4 of that mitochondrial electron transport chain. And that's where we make water, right? And so if we can optimize that water production, then that's really a game changer for clients, because then it does all the things that we've talked about with water in the body. And so red light therapy is huge at optimizing that water production in the mitochondria. So I will have clients do that. And now I'm pairing it with methylene blue. And this is like next level, because I know. Maybe you've talked with people about methylene blue before, but like that combination is so fascinating. And there's way more compliance when you give people stuff to take and stuff to use, as opposed to just stand barefoot first thing in the morning facing east, So that's where I start, sure. Right? That's where I start. And I feel like it really moves the needle for people enough to say, okay, I kind of get what's going on. So they want to dive deeper then.
I think that the great thing that you've said, Carrie, it establishes the why. We've talked to Molly about sleep, and I think all of these things are parts of the whole circle. And I think the why, the way you've explained it for me in the simplest of terms, thank you for dumbing it down for me. I appreciate it. But I think that it talks a lot to what Sarah and all of the red light people we've talked to, and the why. And so it's so important. I think now people understand, like, what is it actually doing to me? Why do I need to do it? It's great. Do you have a favorite red light device that you use, a panel or device that you use? I know Sarah has many. This is where Sarah has her own podcast without me.
I only like to recommend brands that I've personally vetted, right? I'm sure there's so many great companies around the world, but the ones that I've just had best experiences with, there's it's called blockbluelight.au. It's an Australian company. That's great over there. It's a newer company that I found. Maybe it's not newer, it's new to me. I love BioLight. I think Dr. Mike Belkowski does a great job also pairing the science with the product. He's very cool. I have a lovely company just, maybe 4 hours away in Cincinnati, Midwest Red Light Therapy. They do a great job. I like Gemba Red. I like EMR Tech. There's so many wonderful companies that are really starting to recognize how important it is, right? I think some of them, like to jump on I'm going to make a red light panel and then throw it on Amazon and someone's going to buy it. I do discourage my clients from doing that, because I think you need to recognize that a lot of these companies are choosing specific wavelengths and specific intensities, and also optimizing things like EMF production or EMF generation and trying to minimize flicker. Those are important things to consider. And I think those are the companies that I highlighted that I really love for that.
We had another guest on in the health and beauty space. And I think sometimes, especially in the marketing, I'm a professional marketer. It's what I do. And I see like how they actually market red light. And the entry point, a lot of it is around beauty. And I'm wondering if can we just go back to it's going to actually help you live longer? Isn't longevity more important than looking great? I don't care how I look at 105. I'm 105. I look okay, but I'm still running around and walking my dogs and seeing my kids. But is what's needed? Do we have to use beauty as our entry point, or can we try something else here? So it's for you too.
Well, I think there's going to be a couple of entry points, I think, coming up here, Russ, but that's a really good one at first. Because when I tell people to get more light exposure, more sunlight exposure, the first thing is, no, I'm going to get wrinkles. And so then when I recommend this red light therapy panel, then it's like, well, this will, really work on collagen production and collagen support and anti-wrinkle support. And
right.
It does balance it out. But then you're right. The feeling trumps the inside feeling trumps the physical at some point. But I think we're right on a precipice of the research for photobiomodulation or red light therapy being a game changer for Alzheimer's disease. So I think that's where we're really going to start looking at light. It's going to shift from being a beauty support to something so much more powerful than that.
It's still a big hill to climb, because obviously there are a lot of vested interests in providing drug therapies for all of these conditions. And as Carrie said, if you think about university courses and how they're funded, they're normally funded by a pharmaceutical or an affiliated investment bank that's linked to a pharmaceutical, because that's the paradigm that we're in, and especially Alzheimer's. There are a lot of people who are going after the de novo for Alzheimer's right now because it's a massive market and it really works. But there are a lot of obstacles to that, and a lot of them are not so much whether it works or not, they're political, they're economic. So there are massive barriers to this kind of therapy. And, of course, telling someone that they can get better by standing outside, well, that's, commercially that it's a difficult one, isn't it? And, people are running businesses but that's the truth of it. And to get that message out, that's why what Carrie's doing is so important, to just keep on reiterating that message and just keep getting the information out to people, because it's power. Once people know that they have their own power, all you have to do is get up early, look at the sunrise, modify your day, invest in this very, easy to get hold of tech, and make your own decisions rather than be told what to do by a medical professional who doesn't have the training.
This is it.
So, this is proper rebel.
I think we should all three go on tour. Let's all three go on tour. Yes. Make this, I can't tell you how many times Sarah and I have talked about this. We've heard about it. It's not difficult. It's not like you have to inject yourself with something or go out and do something crazy. Like, it's literally just living your life like we're supposed to live our lives. Like, let's go outside, take our shoes off. Let's enjoy a little bit of morning light. Let's get the red light. I really feel like it's time for the three of us to just go on tour. Let's do this. Let's do a whole, we'll campaign. Yes. I'll drive the bus. I don't mind driving the bus.
Russ.
You can be in charge of the music and the movies on the bus, right? Are you good with that?
That's fine. I think your husband might need to help me there, though. Sounds like
he's got the music
also
for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, good. Sarah, I'm also curious, though, in one of these things, the area here of like the advances that Sarah and I have talked to, we've talked to Dr. Joe, we've talked to a lot of people that are really advancing this. Alzheimer's one, where Sarah and Carrie, like, where else are we really seeing this at like the cutting edge of what it actually is going to do for us if we really continue to tap into it?
Well, when you look at it as affecting the mitochondria so profoundly in terms of their health, you're pretty much looking at it for every single diagnosable disease. I don't know if you've talked to Doug Wallace or any of his Martin Picard. There's a lot of like kids, the people that were in his lab, but he was just so brilliant in laying out the fact that we got to get rid of that genetic paradigm, right? And there's so many things that happen in the cell before there's any change in gene expression. And so that's where you have to you ask yourself, okay, now we know that about 90% of diseases are mitochondrial dysfunction in nature. And the tissue that it's in is what the name of the diagnosis is. It's broad, right? But I think another one that's going to be pretty hard to deny soon is cardiovascular health too. The cardiovascular tissue, especially the heart, that's just such a dense population of mitochondria. And the fact that infrared helps to build exclusion zone water, that facilitates blood flow, it optimizes, it reduces inflammation, like antioxidant signaling, or it optimizes oxidation signaling in the mitochondria, all these things that are really, really important for heart tissue. So I think cardiovascular health, I think cancer, again, that industry is not going to want to have this on board with that, again, because cancer, oftentimes, if you can flip that Warburg metabolism, that cancer cell metabolism, you've got a great chance of supporting your body through that, which we all have cancer in our body all the time, right? It's just, are we allowing our immune system to take care of it for us or not? So I think could be a game changer, but I think it's going to have to come direct from consumer demand. It's not going to be a top-down thing. It's not going to be a hospital system saying, oh, we're going to install red light therapy panels in every single room now and take our patients off of these medications. It has to come from the consumer. So that's why I'm okay with it starting as a beauty thing, because the more people who can know about it, then they'll say, oh, I've heard about that for wrinkles, but I want to then kind of look into it a little bit more on my grandma with Alzheimer's disease or my neighbor with Alzheimer's disease. And that's where I think it's going to snowball. But I'm an optimist when it comes to it, but who knows? But at least we know that it's a tool we can have in our toolbox, right?
Yeah, for sure. And already it is approved for some things for us. So already, you can use it for wound healing and for microcirculation and pain. Already those things, the FDA has cleared those things.
Yeah.
So that's something that's already out there.
You did give me a great device for my son for his finger, and he's been using it every day. And it's like finally starting to move now, but thank you. Yes, keep going. That.
Oh,
great. It was great.
Yeah. No, that's super cool. And I can only reiterate, Carrie says, because you're not dealing with a symptom-based approach, which is really a lot of what modern medicine is doing. You're just kind of addressing one symptom. And then, of course, further down the line, you get side effect from that drug because you were so myopic in just treating one symptom. You're not doing that with not only red light therapy, but a lot of these other things that we're talking about, taking care of your circadian biology, grounding, getting rid of mold, eating good food, drinking good water. You're actually starting at the fundamental to get the cells working properly. So then, you don't have the manifestation of whatever the weakest link in your body is that, you then get a specific illness. So really, coming from that place, that's why, it's so cool to be in the biohacker movement, because that's what that group of people are trying to do, is optimize their bodies to prevent themselves from getting these illnesses in the first place. Because prevention is so much better than cure. It's just, it's a hard sell. As a marketeer, you must know that, people normally need a pain point in order to do something, don't they? So it's very difficult to get people to act preventively. But what would be really interesting? All these people who are kind of obsessed with their face and have all these treatments, wouldn't it be fascinating if further down the line, they're the people who don't get Parkinson's and Alzheimer's? Because they've been doing all this red light. Wouldn't that be awesome. Cool?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, I would like
and they're the men that don't lose. And it would be great. It would be great.
Yeah, and hair, of course, because, hair growth is another biggie, because you're helping the mitochondria so that you get a healthier head, you get more hair growth. It's a cosmetic application, but in doing so, you're improving your health.
Yeah, and there's two things you sell this to men. It's about keeping your hair and erectile dysfunction. Those two things alone, you'd be like, if red light solved that, it would be the number one highest selling thing that would sell for men, because men are so ridiculously simple. And I speak for all men.
It's the first question anyone asks me when I go to an event. That's the first question that I get from any guy who comes up. And then you have to kind of say, you can kind of sit on it like this. Yeah, for sure, because you're right.
Is it a bunch of bald men that come up to you and ask you about hair regrowth?
Yeah.
What can I do? Honestly, Carrie, first off, thank you, because Sarah and I have had this discussion so much. And the obsession over water and the way this is connected to water and the way you explain that as sort of the battery charge, it really is fascinating. And I think people understanding that what that means to their body and what's going on in their body, I don't think people really know what's going on in their body. I think people are so confused, and we overwhelm them with take this, do this. And all of a sudden they're just like, I'm just going to sit on my couch and watch another episode of Love Island and I'm cool. I am good. But there's things you can be doing while you're sitting on the couch watching Love Island, which is turn it off and, take care of yourself a little bit. But are there things that we can do, simple things we can do beyond like getting out in the morning? Are there other things that we can suggest to people, like super important? Why is exercise so important? Why is specifically eating certain things so important? Sleep. Are there things that we can just like quickly hack ourselves to get people started on this?
Yeah. And I wouldn't even say exercise, because if you're I deal truly with the sickest of the sick, right? And the idea of exercise for a lot of these people are like, there's no way. But movement, from a biophysics perspective, our connective tissue creates electrons, right? That piezoelectric current. I love talking with you both because I love it when people nod their heads when I'm saying these things.
Sarah and I are going to have a date.
We did the podcast last week on movement. We had Dasha and Lauren on, and they're doing a whole movement biohackers course, and they were talking exactly that, just about
it charges. I mean,
they were doing that. We did the body roll.
The body roll. Well, if my currency is electrons, like, not woo or controversial, because this was even in my biology textbooks, that the cell needs a net negative charge to function. That means it just needs electrons, right? Tons of electrons. And so if movement is one way that I can generate electrons, great. If touching my bare feet to the earth can suck electrons from Earth's surface into my body and give me those electrons, awesome. Even silly little things that I think have been really important for people, such as roll down your windows when you're in the car or open windows whenever possible, just to let all of the light frequencies in. That's been a game changer too. And then, like you said about sleep, these days, I think if we can time a circadian appropriate sleep, that is huge, because in a circadian fashion, there's a reason why there's so much that happens between like 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. in terms of deep tissue repair. And so I tell my clients, if at all possible, we got to get you to sleep before 10 p.m. because that's when the melatonin and the human growth hormone and the oxytocin, all of those things sync up in order to provide a great amount of repair for your body. And if you're someone who is in need of repair because of excessive inflammation, well, we got to make sure we're maximizing it right there.
For sure. There's so much knowledge that you have, Carrie. I mean, I know when I go on your website, have you got like courses, or how can people reach you to kind of learn more? Because I feel like we've just so much just skimmed the surface in this little interview. How can people kind of learn a bit more about it?
Well, thank you, Sarah. Instagram is probably where I put out the majority of my stuff. They've got this subscriber feature now. I'm a beta tester, but it's really cool. So every day I'll pretty much do a post on a topic like this, and then a little subscriber video for $5 a month. You can get my videos where I explain it a little bit differently. I can go into it in a little bit more detail. That's a really kind of to get your toes into this stuff. And then if you're interested, I do. From that link in that bio is where I offer all of my different online courses. So each month I teach either a webinar or a workshop on mitochondria, on water, on light. I always talk science. I can't teach without talking science, but I go also heavy in the application for the people who are just like, just tell me what to do. I don't work well with people who say, just tell me what to do. And then I also teach, if you're a clinician and you're really looking to apply this stuff, I'm the lead faculty member of the Quantum Biology Collective, and it is a certification in basically applied quantum biology, circadian health. It's phenomenal. It's a self-paced with live Q&As. It's a great thing. So you can also get to that through my Instagram page. I'm hoping more and more people really jump on board with that and just all of this stuff, because we need to shift this paradigm mindset. And like you said, when we do, it's empowering. It's empowering for us patients. It's empowering for clinicians to be like, oh, my patients are getting better results in things that I don't have to say. You have to buy $500 worth of supplements. It's basically like turn off your lights at night and go outside in the morning. So it's a really nice win-win, I think, across the board for clinicians and patients alike.
So Carrie, it's Carrie B Wellness with a C, Carrie B Wellness. And your post today was lack of infrared drives mitochondrial dysfunction. So get out there.
It's pretty much, yeah. It's pretty apropos to this conversation.
It's pretty on point. Yeah, I've gone through your YouTube and listened, and I've had it on the background while I'm pottering around, and it's just such dense, really interesting information. I'm sure that it's just something that everyone should be learning, just as a life hack. People need to learn these things. So thank you for putting that out.
Thank you. It's like I'm trying to straddle this line of wanting people to understand the true science, but also make it accessible. So that's what I'm trying to do. So thank you, Sarah. I really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, well, knowledge is power, isn't it? Knowledge. You can't do anything about something if you don't know what you're doing. And I think Russ is right. You need to have a reason for doing some of these things, because we've talked about a lot of different hacks. Some of them are a bit out there. We've talked about a friend of mine who did a dry fast for 7 days. And, people are doing all these things which can seem a little bit fringe. They really can, which is why, we're rebel scientists. However, once you start to really understand how the body's working, then it makes sense. And you go, oh, yeah, it's not, these people are not nuts. They're actually just trying to live in this different paradigm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Couldn't say it better myself.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you very much. It was just lovely to meet you. I hope I bump into you in person soon, whether on the Russ's tour bus or an event or something.
We need a holiday roundtable with a few other people to really do. I think it would be great to do a webinar roundtable with 4 or 5 people on the topic. And
yes, for sure.
Blow it out. Let's make this needs to be a much bigger deal than it is. And I have lived with Sarah long enough now to know that not enough people know about it, and application is important, but understanding, Carrie, the way you described it in such a simple way. Thank you. Thank you for dumbing it down.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Anytime. We gotta access it, right? So Russ, I'll honk a couple of times when that tour bus is outside, and I'll see if I can hop on. Otherwise, I would. Let me know. Let's spread this word any way else we can.
Thank you so much.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Carrie. Take care.
Guys. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
The Rebel Scientist podcast is a Breaking the Gray production, hosted by Sarah Turner and Russ Eisenman. Audio production by Dave Visaya and the podcast engineers. For more information and for our biohacking shopping guide, Visit rebelscientist.com. To hear more incredible Breaking the Gray production podcasts, visit breakingthegray.com. That's gray with an E. breakingthegray.com.
Breaking the gray.